I'm Brittany Lewis with Forbes Breaking News. Senator Dick Durbin returned to the Senate floor for the first time Tuesday after testing positive for COVID last week. During his remarks, Durbin discussed the death of a top Al-Qaeda leader who was considered a major force behind the September 11th attacks. Ayman al-Zawahiri, who most notably served as Al-Qaeda's second-in-command on September 11th and as the group's top leader for over a decade, was killed in Kabul over the weekend by an American drone strike. The Illinois Democrat praised President Biden for his death, saying, quote, "At least 3 U.S. presidents hunted down this man. Joe Biden's administration finally succeeded in ridding the world of this terrible person."
Madam President, this is my first day back in the Senate since contracting COVID last week. It's good to be back, particularly for an historic week. I'm grateful to the healthcare professionals and brilliant scientists who developed the COVID vaccines and therapies so quickly, and the federal funding that made their work possible. Luckily, I'm double vaxxed and double boosted, and I encourage everyone, get your shots. Madam President, at 6:18 a.m. this past Sunday morning in a wealthy neighborhood in Kabul, Afghanistan, 2 U.S. Hellfire missiles delivered justice, at last, to an Al-Qaeda leader, Ayman al-Zawahiri. Al-Zawahiri is dead, and the world is better for it. He was a terrible man who brought horrific suffering to countless numbers of people, innocent people, throughout the world. He was second in command to Osama bin Laden during 9/11, that claimed nearly 3,000 innocent American lives. He was the mastermind behind the bombings of the U.S. embassies in Kenya and Tanzania in 1998 and the bombing of the USS Cole in Yemeni port in 2000. He claimed to act on behalf of Islam, yet his hands were stained with the blood of innocents, including countless Muslims. Since the death of bin Laden 11 years ago, Zawahiri has been the leader of Al-Qaeda. He'd been rumored variously to be hiding in the tribal areas of Pakistan and Afghanistan. He was finally discovered living with his family in a wealthy neighborhood in the center of Kabul. The U.S. intelligence community and the CIA deserve great credit for their careful professional work over months to verify Zawahiri's location and identity. And President Biden deserves credit. At least 3 U.S. presidents hunted down this man. Joe Biden's administration finally succeeded in ridding the world of this terrible person. The war in Afghanistan was America's longest war by far, 20 bloody years. Donald Trump, before he left office, set the deadline to end that war, a decision that Joe Biden inherited and America completed 1 year ago this month. I supported that decision to withdraw troops from Afghanistan. Excuse me. At the same time, President Biden and military leaders warned extremists not to confuse the withdrawal of American boots on the ground with any reduction of our commitment to fight terrorism. The death of Zawahiri is proof that those who harm U.S. citizens, U.S. troops, and U.S. interests will find no safe quarter in this world. Madam President, you don't have to go to Ground Zero in New York or to the Pentagon or to the field in Shanksville, Pennsylvania to see reminders of the terrible suffering that came out of 9/11. You can walk outside of the Senate chamber and see Iraq and Afghanistan veterans and their families who still bear the scars of war. For years, they and many others have urged the Veterans Administration to finally provide health care for the veterans who were exposed to toxic burn pits and other forms of deadly toxic pollution during their service. Last Thursday, many of these veterans traveled to Washington. They came here to see a celebration, the passage of the PACT Act, and President Biden's promise to sign it. It's a critical bill designed to provide VA health services for 3.5 million toxic exposed veterans. Instead of a celebration, they witnessed a betrayal. At the last minute, 25 Republican senators who had just voted for the PACT Act 6 weeks earlier, voted against it. They voted against giving toxic, exposed military veterans the VA health care they deserved. Since then, these veterans, their family members, and supporters have been holding a vigil, what they call a fire watch, on the steps of the Capitol. They've remained there through rain and steaming heat to remind us of our duty to help them. Veterans across this nation, and some out in the steppes, are sick and dying with cancer and other disorders because they were exposed to burn pits, Agent Orange, and other chemical poisons. These are wounds of war, and they should be treated that way. Veterans who have risked their lives for our freedom must not be treated as collateral damage in a political skirmish. John Tester, chairman of the Veterans Committee, has shown real leadership on this. John states it ever so simply, and I think we should all remember. We have to face the real costs of war. We talk about our annual budgets. We talk about the body counts. We talk about all the issues that face us, but we face the reality that those who served in our wars come home many times with visible but often invisible scars that haunt them for a lifetime. Those are the real costs of war. This bill, the PACT Act, that John Tester and Senator Moran of Kansas brought to this floor, address those costs. It is time for us to get it right in the United States Senate. There's a rumor on the floor that there may be an agreement that even today we're going to vote on this. None too soon. Those veterans waiting on the steps deserve it, and the millions at home who are watching this, their families and others who love them, watching this in the hopes that what we do on the floor of the Senate will finally give them some comfort in their lives. The Senate must hold another vote on the PACT Act, and I hope it will be today. That's the rumor on the floor. Let's get it right this time. Let's reassemble that bipartisan coalition that passed the bill originally. Let's restore the faith of the veterans community and many Americans in the United States Senate that on a bipartisan basis, we can stand up for those who stood up and served our nation. On another matter, Madam President, the last several days have brought a stream of troubling revelations about the disappearance of Secret Service and Department of Homeland Security text messages from around the time of the deadly January 6, 2021 insurrection on this Capitol. The missing texts could provide critical evidence about one of the worst crimes and greatest threats to our Constitution ever perpetrated in America. The disappearance of this critical information could jeopardize efforts to learn the full truth about January 6th and hold responsible anyone who planned and participated in that attack. I don't know whether the failure to preserve these critical government texts from January 6th is a result of bad faith or stunning incompetence, but I do know that the man who has overseen this fiasco is not the right person to investigate it. This man has lost whatever credibility he may have once had on this matter. That is why I've asked Attorney General Merrick Garland to step in and take control of this investigation into the missing text. This is what we know so far. Joseph Kafari was nominated to be Inspector General for the Department of Homeland Security by former President Donald Trump. He remains in that position today. The Department of Homeland Security includes the Secret Service and many other critical government agencies. Inspectors General are supposed to be independent watchdogs for their department and make sure that the people working in that department don't engage in waste, fraud, or abuse. If there is any problem, the Inspector General is required by law to report it to Congress. In recent weeks, we learned belatedly from Mr. Kafari, this Inspector General, that number one, his office asked the Secret Service last February for text messages, emails, and other records that could shed light on January 6. And he was met with months of delay and stonewalling. Mr. Kafari has known since at least this February of this year that Secret Service texts from January 6 had been erased in supposedly routine resets of the agency phones. Imagine that. Agencies entrusted with the security of the United States, when there is a handoff of official phones, that they are erased at that time? Mr. Kafari did not share that information with Congress for 5 months. 5 months. Mr. Kafari also belatedly informed Congress that texts from the cell phones of the top 2 leaders in the Department of Homeland Security during the insurrection, Acting Secretary Chad Wolf, Acting Deputy Secretary Ken Cuccinelli, were apparently lost during another reset after they turned in their government phones. Imagine the fumbling of critical information about an event as historic as the January 6th Trump insurrectionist mob that invaded this Capitol. According to public reports, department staff actually came up with a plan to retrieve the deleted emails when they first learned about them. Listen to this. Mr. Kafari's office inexplicably killed the plan. This just isn't another government agency we're talking about, as important as that would be. The Department of Homeland Security has some of the most sophisticated intelligence and investigative capabilities, not just in the United States, but in the world. It's hard to believe that this department accidentally deleted text that could shed light on one of the greatest constitutional events and crimes ever committed in the history of the United States. But it would be just as problematic if they did. Either way, we need to get to the bottom of this. This month, after news of the missing text became public and his office came under criticism, Mr. Kafari belatedly opened a criminal investigation into the Secret Service's missing text messages. It was the right thing to do, but he's the wrong person to do it. Mr. Kafari has lost his credibility. The same law that allows Mr. Kafari to conduct this criminal investigation, the Inspector General Act, gives to the Attorney General of the United States the power to take control of it. It's time for Attorney General Garland to step in and oversee this investigation with impartial professionalism that justice and history demand. Madam President, I'd like to ask that the next statement I make be placed in a separate part in the record.
Without objection.
Madam President, it was February when I was watching the Super Bowl with my family at home. I noticed something that was odd. There was LeBron James on TV. In a commercial, he tells a younger version of himself, and I quote, "If you want to make history, you got to call your own shots." He was promoting Crypto.com, a cryptocurrency exchange based in Singapore. Soon after, one of my favorite comedians appeared on the screen, Larry David. His ad hit a similar note. He warned viewers not to, quote, "miss out on crypto." That ad was sponsored by a different crypto exchange, headquartered in the Bahamas. I saw these ads and thought to myself, what's going on here? This is a football game. Both companies just a few years old. And 30-second ads cost millions of dollars, $7 million, I understand. I can't imagine enlisting LeBron James and Larry David for that purpose. So how exactly can these exchanges that most Americans have never heard of afford to shell out tens of millions of dollars on Super Bowl ads? And better yet, why? Last week, National Public Radio ran a story that helped to answer my question. You see, these crypto companies weren't simply promoting their products. They were trying to create a veneer of credibility. These Super Bowl ads were high-stakes attempts to convince hardworking Americans into investing in volatile, unwieldy, and poorly regulated assets called cryptocurrency. Unfortunately, it seems to be working. Let me tell you about Michelle Murkowski. She lives in Washington State. She watched the same ads I did on the Super Bowl. She shared her story with National Public Radio. When Michelle saw celebrities promoting crypto products, she said it convinced her that, quote, "it's not just scammers that are using them. I felt safe to put my money there." So how did Michelle's crypto investment pan out? Well, 3 months after the Super Bowl, she was down $8,000. She was another victim of the crypto market meltdown that began in May. For the record, in the course of 24 hours, more than $200 billion of value in the crypto industry vanished. And just last week, the industry lost more than 5% of its value again in one day. These rapid losses convinced Michelle to cash out. How does she feel about her crypto experience today? She said, "There's definitely peace that comes with selling off such a volatile asset. I don't have to worry every day, am I losing another $1,000? Michelle was lucky she was able to wash her hands and cut her losses. But Madam President, for the majority of Americans who cannot afford even a $1,000 emergency, losing $8,000 in 3 months is a disaster. That's the difference between paying your rent and living on the street. Look, if you're a retail investor with money to invest and you want to try your hand at the crypto casino, by all means, grab your chips and head to the tables, within reason. But when we're talking about an industry that has reached more than $1 trillion in value, that has shed hundreds of billions of dollars in the past few months, it's time for caution. As I mentioned, cryptocurrencies, even the most well-known like Bitcoins, are poorly regulated, if they are regulated at all. And Bitcoin has seen wild swings. Bitcoin has lost roughly 2/3 of its value since last November. The cost of one Bitcoin fell from $68,000 to under $21,000. And these assets are not only volatile, they're virtually untraceable. Compare that to an investment like a share of stock. And yes, there is risk in the stock market, or an exchange-traded fund. If you're a retail investor and you buy a couple $100 worth of shares in a company, you know you're assuming some risk. That's the nature of investment. But here's the difference. When you buy a stock, under the law, you can find out important information about the company. How many products are they selling? How much are they paying their executives? What risk does a company foresee? You have significantly more information and transparency about where your investment is going. Many ETFs even disclose their holdings every day. After all, they have to. They're required by law. They're regulated by the Securities and Exchange Commission. With cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin, there's no such transparency. They're decentralized, illiquid, and highly speculative. Where are the disclosures? Where are the consumer protections? In many cases, there are none. Instead of encouraging working families to risk their hard-earned cash into remarkably unstable investments, let's pump the brakes on the rocket to the moon. Last Tuesday, I sent a letter, along with my colleagues, Senators Warren and Smith, to Fidelity Investments. They're one of the biggest 401k providers in the world. In April, they made a decision that surprised me and frankly concerned me. Fidelity says they'll soon allow 401k plan sponsors to offer plan participants exposure to Bitcoin. Here's the issue. A 401k account is a nest egg. It's a vehicle that tens of millions of Americans rely on so that many years from now they can retire in dignity. And during this period of economic uncertainty, I can't think of exposing any reason to expose retirement savers to new risk. As we all saw on Super Bowl Sunday, whether it's Matt Damon or LeBron James or Larry David, there's no shortage of options for people who want to invest in crypto. But retirement accounts must be held to a higher standard. And my hope is that Fidelity will live up to its name and meet that standard by reversing this decision. It's also important to recognize that even if you don't invest in a single cryptocurrency, we all have a stake in this industry. Why? Because the process for so-called mining of these digital assets consumes jaw-dropping amounts of energy. As of May, according to the public broadcasting system, the world's Bitcoin mining operations had an annual energy budget equal to the entire country of Argentina, or all the tea kettles in England boiling water for 26 years. And 7 of the largest Bitcoin mining companies consume enough energy alone to power every single home in Houston. That's just Bitcoin. That calculation doesn't even account for the fossil fuels being burned to produce other coins, like Dogecoin. When companies like Fidelity and celebrities like Larry David are hawking an asset class that is unstable, untraceable, and pumping untold tons of carbon into our atmosphere, we should all have the good sense to step back and wrap our heads around this trillion-dollar industry that's not even old enough today to drive a car. Madam President, I've been in several meetings with my colleagues on this cryptocurrency. I am by no means an expert. I have tried to learn as much as I can, but it's an extremely complicated operation. I will tell you this, I fear that we will do something, but not enough. I fear that just a limited amount of regulation by the federal government may convince people that we really have a grip on what's happening in this industry. There is risk associated with it that is major. I've had some well-known and very successful individuals in my office, and I've asked them, they've made millions of dollars. What about crypto? Most of them have said, I wouldn't touch it. And yet we've got to tell the American people, when it's advertised, when it's available, you've got to be careful, particularly when it comes to people with limited assets, people with an adverse situation when it comes to risk, and people who are putting literally their savings and their retirement on the line on these investments. That's why I joined my colleagues in writing to Fidelity and asking them to rationalize how this could be part of any 401k plan. We owe it to the American people to provide them the protection in this industry as we have in so many other areas of investment. It's fundamental, it's fair, and it's the only way to guarantee to them that they have some grip on making investments that could be in their best interest and might not be as well. I yield the floor.